This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another great episode. I'm excited for today's guest. He has been to 104 countries. He's taken 13 languages. He has a PhD in smiles and philosophy. Yeah, I said that right. Smiles and philosophy. He is the owner of Perfect Publishing and the radio host of Amplified. But most importantly, he is a father to an amazing young man who is making a huge splash in the world. And he truly is a remarkable young man that he is raising up to help this next generation of leaders out. So I want to welcome my good friend, my buddy, Ken Roshan, to the program. How are you doing today, brother?
I have to tell you, brother, I'm doing great.
It is so good to see you. You know, it's funny because when we first met, I didn't like you, and then all of a sudden you started throwing out these puns left and right with my name, which I almost didn't say something because I realized that if I started it that way, everyone was going to hear you make a pun with my name and your name for probably the next hour.
Well, naturally,
it's going to happen, but we can not do that.
All right, we'll cut back on this one. All right.
Well, Ken, I love your story. You know, it's so fascinating when someone is as eclectic as you are. I think you have a very broad stroke of life. You've experienced a lot of things in your life. And so I'm curious kind of for where you started out. Where did you start out your journey? Because if I recall correctly, you actually traveled around a lot as a kid. Your father was in the military, and you were an Army brat, right?
That is correct. You know, from my viewpoint, my shoulders go into the blue part of your background. So it looks like, I mean, I don't know if it looks like that for you, but it's really tripping me out that I'm kind of standing behind you as kind of.
Well, it's because you have this ominous presence. As soon as you're in the same room with Ken, like you just feel like he wants to give you a bear hug, and he's just wrapping his arms around you.
You know, it was kind of rough. It was like the third or fourth day of bear hugs with you, and you were like, "Will you please leave me alone?" And then you finally conceded, "I'll do one," and that really changed everything. So, to your question. My dad was in the military. He was the first one to go to college, and he went to Providence College, went through the ROTC program, and I was born in Rhode Island for a whopping couple months that I got to enjoy Rhode Island, the smallest state, the state of hope, and whisked off to Paris. And long story short, I spent most of my life outside the United States by the time I was 12, and my first year of feeling different but not being bullied or made to feel different was in India. I was going to my kindergarten year, age 5, and I went to an all-Indian school. I don't even remember how big it was. There was no trauma, but I couldn't believe I never learned about bullying until I really was in America.
That's kind of crazy. It's crazy though, because it really is a big thing nowadays, especially with the internet. Internet has really made bullying a big topic, and how you combat that and how you go in reducing that, right?
Well, I think they should make it an Olympic sport.
Oh, I love you, dude. Now, in terms of your success, I know one of your big success points is your son. And I think it's absolutely spectacular that, so you're a writer, you've written, and I want to get into a little bit of that story too in a little bit, but your son has actually written, if I'm not mistaken, he's written 12 books and published them.
I published them. He did not publish them. I will not give him credit for that.
All right. So Dad did have a little bit of help with the publishing portion of it. He kind of had a company and he was publishing it. But I mean, that's pretty spectacular for him to write 10, 12 books.
12
right?
books. Yeah. And I do want to make an important point here. Me being a publisher, me being a dad, obviously I'm biased, and I'm not going to dispute that part. But I do want to say that he really did them. He really wrote them. I showed him how to do it, and he did it. All the books are his. They deserve to have his name on the front cover. The first one happened as a result of the pandemic. I was told on March 20th of 2020, hey, you got about almost 400 events canceled. You have 2 left. And I looked at my wife, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was a past 8th grade physics and chemistry teacher called a physical science teacher. which is the coolest course ever. It's the study of matter and energy. I mean, does it get any better than that? And I said to my son, who was in third grade at the time, I said, Kenny, you are so lucky. Daddy is going to be teaching you physics and chemistry, which is physical science. And he says, okay. And he didn't know that it was eighth grade. I never tell him that. And I started teaching him the periodic table. I started teaching him all the chemicals. And he said, Daddy, this seems kind of hard. And I said, Kenny, all the daddies are teaching this right now to their kids. You need to know this. And so he learned the periodic table, but I gave him a fun thing to do. I said, hey, why don't you do a book? He said, what would I do a book on? I said, well, you like to laugh. Why don't you make a joke book? Here's the part that is so, and Kenny will show you this book, but this is one of my favorite books ever because it caused him to love the experience. And what you don't know, Nathan, and had you known me a long time, you would know that Kenny was an introvert. He was not only an introvert, he hated his voice. He hated being photographed. He hated being videotaped. And when I say hate, if you did a videotape and he found out you did it, he would yell, delete, delete, delete until you did. So this boy, I'll just say, is a different kid now. He's a child that actually loves his voice. He loves to be a ham. He loves to be self-expressed. And I think the joke book taught him timing, humor, confidence, and that he could be funny. And when you bring joy to the world, you start really, and you step into the fact that, hey, this is fun.
Yeah.
So he did a riddle book after that. And my wife accused me somewhere around that point of, hey, you're making him do these books. He's only doing these books because of you. And I said, Kenny, if you don't want to do any more books, don't do them for me. If you like them, I'll help you, but I will not do these books. And whether he was trying to please me or not, he decided he wanted to do more books. So I just supported him. And then I got tougher and tougher about, hey, you need to sell me on the fact that I'm going to publish this book. I'm paying money for these books. You need to sell me. So he had to learn half the material in any book that he did. So if he did a book about science, he had to know half the periodic table. He had to know half the whatever. If he did a book about the world, flags, and there are 206 flags, he had to know 100 of them. And he did. He learned them before I would publish. And the reason for that, Nate, is obvious. If the media ask him some questions and he goes, I have no idea what you're talking about, I think the finger would point at me that they were my books, not his. So we made sure that it was very clear they were his books.
Yeah.
Oh, he's in town right now.
No, really.
He's
back from a book. He's back from a book tour.
Yes. And I want to thank you for so many things, just being so gracious and being a part of his life. And I do want that part to be something he shares on the show right now, if that's okay.
Of course. I would love to have him on. For all of you out in digital land, let's give him a round of applause. We figured we do a little bit of applause for you. Hey, how are you doing, Kenny?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Whoa, you have an accent now all of a sudden.
No, I don't. I don't have an accent.
Well, I heard that you wrote a few books. Do you want to tell us about one of your favorite books that you got to write?
It's right here. It's my newest book. It's an autobiography about myself. And also, I want to thank you for the Action Bible.
Yeah.
I finished reading it.
You finished reading that entire Action Bible that I sent you?
Yeah.
Wow. Like, not only do you write books, but you also read books?
I know about the read books, but yeah, I do write books as well.
Well, you're so welcome for that Action Bible. So what do you love most about your newest book that's coming out, or that's already, is it out right now? People can buy it right now?
It is out. You could buy it on Amazon, or you could you could buy it on Amazon.
Okay, so if you guys are listening right now, go to Amazon right now, look up Kenny J. Roshan, Rochon, and get a copy of his book. Let's make him a bestseller. That'd be really awesome. But hey, I'm curious, what did you love most about writing this book?
I loved having the feeling that I was like very popular, because I love being known at other places. Like recently, when I went to Rhode Island in summer, this woman just came up to me and asked, "Are you Kenny Roshan, the author?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh wow, that's super cool, like in Rhode Island." So it's really nice being popular around some places.
Wow, that's so cool. So you have books all over the United States, and people are already coming up to you and saying that you are an author. Are you Kenny the author, which is so cool. Are you going to write another book? Do you have another book in your mind that you want to write, or is this the end?
No, it's not the end. I'm thinking of making a horror story, and instead of making books that are about like 20 pages, I want to set my own personal record by making it at least 70.
Wow, that's absolutely crazy. Now, Kenny, how old are you?
I'm 10.
You're 10. You made a goal that you wanted to write a certain number of books before you turned 10. Do you remember that goal?
Yeah, I wanted to have 10 books when I was turned 10.
Did you have 10 books when you turned 10?
Yes, I did. I had 12.
You had 12 books, which is so cool
Yeah.
and so amazing that you have gone on a journey, that you have started learning about your story, and you're putting your story into a book format. But not only that, my son is actually and my daughter have both read one of your books, and they love your science book. It's a ton of fun for them to read. Hey Kenny, tell me what the bottom line is.
Oh, well, the bottom line is something that teaches children to not make excuses, possibly adults.
Mm.
I learned it when I was about like 7 years old. He made me memorize it, and I memorized it. This is the bottom line. Face it, nobody owes you a living. What you achieve or fail to achieve in your lifetime is directly related to what you do or fail to do. No one chooses parent or childhood, but you could choose your own directions. Everyone has problems and obstacles to overcome, but that too is relative to each individual. Nothing is carved in stone. Excuses are for losers. Those who take responsibility of their actions are the real winners in life. Winners meet life challenges head on, knowing there are no guarantees of giving it all they got. Knowing there is never too late or too early to begin. Time plays no favorites and will pass whenever you act or not. Take control of your dreams. Take control of your life. Dare to dream. Take risk. If you aren't willing to take control of your work for your goals, then don't expect others to. Believe in yourself.
I am curious. I want to ask you one more question here, Kenny. Who has been your greatest hero and influence since you started writing?
I would say it's my father, and in second place, I would just do some people from my school because some of them did not know that, and when they pulled out a book, they saw a book in my backpack that I had my face on, it, and they said, "Whoa, what's that? What's that?" And yeah, that made me feel very nice and popular.
That is so cool. Well, we are so proud of you for writing 12 books before you turned 10. And not only are you an author, but it sounds like you're going to have some pretty awesome books as you continue to write over the years. And it sounds like you're having a pretty profound impact on other people, other kids. So, where can people go and find your books, Kenny?
I think you could find some on Amazon, and sometimes I like go on book fairs, and you can meet me on book fairs. I don't know when my next one is, but my dad will let you guys know when my next one, when I'm gonna be in the next book fair.
Awesome. I love it. Kenny, thank you so much for being on the show. Maybe we'll have you back on. We'll do a special with just Kenny. Does that sound
Mm,
good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Well, thank you, Nathan. That was very kind of you to give him some time. Basically, when he's speaking and sharing what I've taught him, it goes without saying that not only am I proud, but it's what I share on stage is just an important facet that any father can give their child, which is a chance to be confident. And his name on Facebook is K3 Game Changer because my
I
wife
love
did not
that.
want his name to be disclosed in the public's eye. So we came up with K3, and then Game Changer is how I wanted to raise him. I wanted him to change any game he wanted to change.
Mm, I love that. Well, now his name's out there because I put it out there.
Well, now he's 10. He's got a black belt now, so he's good.
He's got a black belt. He's got 12 bucks. Well, it's funny though because so many fathers I think aren't involved with their kids enough to really hone gifts and skills that their kids have. And I think it's pretty incredible just as a father for you to see his gift of writing and speaking into that. I know that you are a writer. You've written a number of books, countless books. I bet you probably have the number, but uh I'm going to say countless books that you could go and you can look up and you've given me a couple, and some of them make me laugh very hard. But, I think it really is a testament to who you are as someone who wants to add value. In fact, you truly do believe that there is a book in every single person. And we'll get to that a little bit later on in the program. But I'm curious, where did this love for writing come from? Was this always something that you had when you were a kid, or was this something that someone spoke over to you? How did that develop in your life to write?
There were several influences. One was that I received a Tom Sawyer, Mark Twain book, and I read it, and I just enjoyed it so much. And I said, "Man, to be Mark Twain, I mean, what a god this guy is." And then I read other books of his, and he was just such a witty person. Then my grandmother was a Mensa. She had a IQ of around 165 and was a published poet and had a photographic memory. So anything she ever read, you could call her up and say, "Hey, I'm reading this in school. Can you tell me what it means?" And she would take the next half hour to explain it all. But and then
So you
my
need to be
uncle
careful.
was very gifted. He was an architect, and he wrote a couple architecture books. So for me, I was like, this is what it is to be important in the world, to write a book. So I said, I'm going to write a book. But
Mm,
here's the crazy thing. I'm
yeah.
gonna for 25 years, maybe even longer than that. And my mom got Alzheimer's, and I was a caregiver. And in that period of time, I was really awakened, Nathan, that I wasn't living anything close to a purpose-driven life. I wasn't living anything close to a life that would impact others or that would be a legacy I could be proud of. And so I was a Christian, but I really became a Christian. And I stepped into, how do I serve? And
Mm,
what is my gift? And what am I supposed to be doing on this planet while I'm alive? And the word amplify became very, very prominent. It was a word that was given, this is your talent. And it took me 7 years to match the real word that went with it, and it was amplify goodness. And
mm,
it's interesting, but amplifying goodness is marketing, but marketing what? Content. And so content was legacy pieces like books and publishing. So I did a book, and I did a really, really bad job. I lost about $22,000. It was a year after my mom passed. I'd promised my mom on her transition that I would do a book, and I would step in to be in a tribute to her life because she was such a cheerleader in mine. And first book, horrific. I mean, it had 42 glaring errors, as if I didn't know how to write in English language. My dad was a speechwriter for the government, and he was not available because of the caregiving. My mom was a master's in reading, history, writing, all these master's degrees, but she wasn't there anymore. So I had all these wonderful ideas, but I was not at that time prolific. And
mm.
so I looked up at God, and I said, "What's the joke here? You just told me I need a purpose-driven life. I think you said write a book, and I did, and I just lost $22,000. Is the message you're giving me don't do any more books and get the heck out of Dodge, or what is the message?" And I was able to ascertain after a week of crying that what he was teaching me, and it did take really a lot for me to stretch my mind to figure out what he was teaching me, but what he was teaching me was, this is what authors experience. And
Mm,
if you don't experience it, you don't know the pain. And if you don't know
yep.
the pain, you can't solve the problem. So I spent around $3,000 or $4,000 to correct all the issues, and it was actually a good book. It just had so many issues with the guy I hired. He changed my voice so it wasn't me, and I had people saying, "Hey, that doesn't even sound like you." So I had to pay to have it all put back, and when it got put back, all the errors went in. So I don't even know if they were my errors. They could have been his errors for all I know. But the point is, there were 42 glaring errors, and my dad said, "This is a travesty. You have your name on the book, and it's the same name as mine. You're just junior. I'm senior." I was like, "I know, Dad. I know." So I spent $3,500 to re-release the book. It was a painful 5 years of getting all my money back, but I sold 8,000 books, went 5 editions. And during that course of time, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, you did a book, and you helped me do a book." And I helped about, I don't know, 10 people do a book. And I said, "I like this. This
Mm,
is really fun." And I found, just like everything in life, there's hacks and there's ways to approach something that I had an unorthodox way of looking at everything. So I came up with these systems that weren't being used. And so we had almost 99% of our people that said, "I want to get a book done." We got the books done in pretty record time, like 3 months or less. And we had a methodology for making sure the book actually experienced some type of tipping point, So the Malcolm Gladwell effect of just marketing the heck out of it and showing them how they could leverage it and doing all kinds of just fun stuff that caused them to enjoy the process and say, I want do another book.
Mm.
So one thing I'd like to say that's really important is that most people that publish a book, I feel that they feel disgusted, or they feel disheartened, or they feel like a failure. And
Mm.
it's the saddest thing to see this, because they just didn't have a marketing plan, or they just didn't know all the variables, or they didn't know what it would be like to have fun doing it. And we make it
Yeah.
an adventure. So I want to say that I saw this as the reason I could actually serve. I could be the
Mm.
person that causes a person to say, that was fun, I'm doing it again. The reason Kenny's done 12 books is because he has fun doing them. The reason
Yeah.
I've done countless books is because I enjoy doing them. But I want to tell the definition of failure with regard to doing a book. I came up with this definition. I have a definition for the perfect partnership, and I have a definition for failure with publishing. I think that when you publish a book and you lose your butt financially, like 90%, and you decide you'll never do another book, I consider that a failure. And I have figured out a way to not have failures with books. In other words, they break even or they make money, and they want to do more books, and that's fun. And I would like to do a book with you, Nathan. I'd like to put that manifested. I'd like to put in out in the air. My son said something at age 8. He said, "Daddy, I have 6 books, and if I did 4 more books in the next 2 years, I'd have 10 books for my 10th birthday." Well, he obviously exceeded that number,
Yeah.
but he had me ask myself a question. Hey, you're at this age, and I right now I'm 59. I did something like 6 books in the last year, because
Mm.
he got me really excited about doing books. And by the way, my newest book, my 46th book, is a book I might have to have you write the forward to. It is called "The 10 Mistakes You Make Making Mistake Books." And
I love it.
and the part that I love the most is there's only 8 in the book.
So what you're telling me is you've actually gotten better at not putting the mistakes in
Yeah.
in the book.
And by the way, mistakes is spelled incorrectly, and the forward is spelled FOURWORD. It's for and the requirement of the person that writes the forward is they can only use 4 words, but they're allowed to use 5, but they have to scratch out the 5th.
See, you guys can understand how much fun it is actually to work with Ken, or even the fact that I love what you say about this is that most people, when it comes to doing something, they make it so agonizing, so painful that they never want to do it again. When in actuality, everything is an experience. A really famous author actually said that the first draft is always right, and it's true.
It is.
Because your first draft is always your first speech is every single thing that you do the very first time is not going to be good.
Nope.
By the way, if you guys thought I was saying a bad word, that's not true. I was saying the first draft is always bad, right? Everything is always bad the first time around. But it's so true though.
I love the fact that you did that, because when you were in Colorado Springs and you didn't have the beeping thing, you actually said the first draft is always beep, and you actually used the word beep.
So you got to be careful too, because Ken will also put words in your mouth. But one of the things that is so like relevant to you and so apparent when you meet yourself, like you specifically, Ken, is that you have this absolute love for your son, and you want to see him succeed. You want to you don't want to just like prop him up. You actually want to show him how to lift himself up, not to do it for him, but to show him how to do things. And I'm curious, like, what impact did your father have on you that has carried over in such a way? Because I know that your father, he stepped away from the NSA in order to take care of your mom when she was fighting through her dementia, right? And that I imagine seeing that the love that your father had for his wife was tremendous. But I'm curious, how did that also translate over your interactions with your dad growing up? How did that translate over to being a father and wanting to be a great father to your son, Kenny?
So I would say there are 3 phases to that answer. Phase 1 is that my dad was a great dad. He was very powerful. He was very strict, and he did not know honestly what to do with me or how to handle me. And my brother and sister were very malleable. They were conformists. They would do whatever needed to be done. And I was a rebel, not intentionally. I was probably an undiagnosed ADHD, hyperactive, and a creative and a serial entrepreneur in the making that he just didn't know what to do with.
Mm.
So I got my brother in trouble all the time. I got myself in trouble all the time. And my brother didn't get in trouble because they knew that it was me that got my brother in trouble.
The
And
truth
so
comes out.
he had a hard time with me. And
Mm.
so phase one was that he loved me and he was strict. And phase two was that he didn't know what to do with me. And so that really affected me when I wanted to be a dad for Kenny. I said, I'm going to raise my son the way he needs to be raised, not
Mm.
the way I want to raise him, but the way he needs to be raised. And I need to be raised by an entrepreneur. I need to be raised by someone who is an out of the box thinker. I need to
Mm.
be raised by someone who is nonconformist. And my dad was not any of these things. And so his strictness turned very confrontational as we entered our teenage years, and to the point that I didn't know if I'd have a relationship with him. Now, I knew he loved me, and I knew I frustrated the hell out of him. So this is not an issue of my dad beating me or me not deserving it or him being a ruthless, horrible, bad dad. This is just a guy that didn't know what to do with a kid like me.
Yeah.
And when he decided to leave and take care of my mom was my hero. She was my eternal optimist cheerleader, and
Mm.
he loved her and he took care of her. And it was notebook-esque what happened.
Mm.
They met at 16, and he said the words to my brother, my sister, and me. He says, no one is going to take care of your mother like I will. So I'm going to go on a sabbatical. And he didn't know if it was a 6-month sabbatical like the pandemic or a 2-year sabbatical like the pandemic. Remember the pandemic? It was like, we
Yeah.
got 6 months. Anyway, ironically, my brother and sister will probably, if they ever get interviewed, they'll probably be mad about this part of it. But they were not so keen on my dad doing this. And they were really like, have mom taken care of. And we're very busy. We're in a job that doesn't really allow us the freedom. I turned to my guys and I said, hey, we had 45 guys working for Absolute Entertainment at the time. That was my company. And I said, my mom needs me for the first time. My dad needs me for the first time. I'm out. You guys got to figure this out. You've been trained to run this company without me, because I used to travel a month, 2 months, 3 months, which is how I got to the 100 countries. And I left, and the company, it survived, and it in some degree thrived while I was gone. And
Mm.
I was able to really be with my mom and dad. And I was really able to tell my dad I love him, because
Mm.
what he was doing was showing me what you do when you're a husband and when you're a father and when you care about your family. You are unconditional, which
Mm.
brings me to my definition, the perfect partnership, which I think Dr. Michelle Mraz put in one of her books. So the perfect partnership is when two or more people agree verbally or in writing to compete to unconditionally give more than the other. I've had the most beautiful partnerships when I attracted that kind of conversation. And so my mom and dad were partners, they were friends, and they were just amazing parents. And so
Mm.
when Kenny, long story to get this answer, when Kenny was born, I made some very, very big decisions. I said, decision number one, I will never hit my son. Decision two, I will never lie to my son, ever. And decision three, I will raise him so that he is raised the way a different person could be raised, to think
Mm.
differently, to be differently, to be accepted differently. There are 14, 12 people on the other side of the street that wait for the bus. My son, for 5 years, has always waited on this side of the street by himself with me. He does not have any desire to be over with the people that, ironically, don't even support his popcorn sales, don't, you know,
Hmm.
celebrate differences. So he's fine, and he likes being different. And in fact,
Mm.
this hair thing is actually him making a statement about it's okay to be different.
I love that. And, I think that almost resonates a little bit even with your story too, him wanting to be different and to stand out. But I mean, like you said, like you stood out at one point in your life and you got a lot of guff for that, right? Because you were bullied as a kid, right?
Quite a bit, yeah.
How did that play into life as you were growing up of wanting to stand out? Well, actually, maybe not even wanting to stand out. You just stood out because that's who you were,
Yeah, I
and
didn't
yet,
understand that why people weren't different like me. It just to me, I loved art. I love science. I was left brain, right brain. I was ambidextrous. I mean, to me, that's what all people are, and it didn't make sense that other people didn't relate. I could be with the athletes. I could be with the artist. I was identified many, many times because I was in places people say, now I know who you are. I know what you are. I think I know what you are. And it wasn't true. I'm just Ken. I was a
yeah.
Renaissance person. And um, the bullying taught me that I always want to stick up for the underdog, that I
Mm,
always want to be the person. I mean, I have actually put my neck out for people that were having an entire fraternity saying they're being blackballed out. And I said, and I would rally my fraternity. When you're not quite a fraternity brother, you're in your first phase. I said, hey, they're going to be getting rid of one of our brothers, and
mm,
we're accepting this. If we're truly brothers for each other, why wouldn't we say, if you get rid of him, you get rid of all of us? And I was able to
mm.
cause a new conversation to happen where they didn't blackball the guy because they were going to lose their entire pledge class.
Wow.
And it's
It,
just a
it
conversation.
it's interesting to see, and it's also interesting to hear the chameleon piece about your story of, like, being able to blend in from one group to the next and go from one thing to the next, um, with really just kind of going into that mold of whatever you need to be, right? Because I think there is something to that, where as a person you want to be able to help in whatever capacity you can. And
Well,
and I'm curious, at what point for you did you realize you had to stop being the chameleon, you had to just start being you?
I don't know if I was being a chameleon as much as I was being curious about
Mm,
who these different entities were, different tribes were, and wondering, do I fit here? And and then also learning that I love people. I love differences. In fact, I started really loving anyone that was different.
mm,
And so I stood up for those people that are different because I felt like I need to stand up for myself. That's my way of standing up for myself. So I don't know about the chameleon thing. I will say the chameleon thing from a standpoint, the blend and
yeah.
the wanting to see if I could, the challenge of it, but not necessarily the acceptance part. Not like that.
In terms of business, like, you have your publishing business, you've had a number of businesses throughout your life. You even had some businesses that have had some sour tastes in your mouth. I've heard you talk about overcoming, and the importance of overcoming difficult situations. I always like to say that, life is this huge crucible. There are moments that heat up, and we have to remove some things in our life, and we have to realize, what is most important, the purest things in our life, and hold on to those things. And, earlier on in your career, you actually had someone embezzle from you, and you pretty much lost everything. I think it was like 90% of everything that you had, you lost.
Right.
And I'm curious, for the entrepreneur that's out there, for the business owner that's out there that says, I built it up this point, I don't want to partner with anyone. I don't want to chance my entire livelihood on partnering or being with someone else. What would you tell that person? Because you've experienced that trust piece and the trust being broken. How do you continue to move forward knowing there could be that possibility?
Well, first of all, did she give you the money? That's the first thing I
No,
want to know.
she didn't.
Okay. So, Nathan, I had a lot of maturity in this area for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I did travel the world. Maybe it's because I had a little more perspective. But anytime you get embezzled, it is honestly shame on you. You attracted it, you allowed it, you didn't vet it, and you didn't do your due diligence. And so when you
Mm,
can actually accept that, then you can do something about making sure it doesn't happen again.
mm,
Number two, she wasn't qualified for this position, and I asked her to do a position that I didn't want to do myself, which was CFO. I didn't want to do that. And so I was making an inordinate amount of money, so much so that she was able to steal 5 to 10,000 a month, and I didn't even notice it. I mean, it was
mm,
so easy. And it went over years because she was hiding the bank statements and all that stuff. I said, well, it's weird. I mean, I just sold like $80,000 this month, and we only have enough money to pay bills and maybe an extra 10,000. Like, it didn't, but I wasn't adding money because I didn't think she was stealing. But I want to say that when you have someone hurt you, and you decide to evaluate humans based on that person hurting you, you are punishing yourself
Mm.
and everyone that didn't do it. And so
Mm.
the best advice I can give you is advice I took. I decided that I have to trust people again in order to have a relationship and the possibility of having abundance. And the definition came into play at that point. I created that
Mm.
definition, and all of a sudden, I mean, I asked myself, Nathan, I said, there are several people that have lied. And by the way, when I lost everything, I had 11 people on my staff. 9 of them started their own companies and used my exact business model. And I said, and everyone bet against me. They was like, there is no way you're coming back from this one. It took me 3 years. I came back. But
Mm.
my point is, if someone comes to you and they're not honest, they're giving you all the signals. Pay attention. They're either not looking you in the eye. They're either not excited about your what you have to say, and then they're not contributing to what they're adding to the conversation.
Mm.
Most people I've noticed that are takers are actually listening for the cues of agreement. They're not creating any type of conversation. They're looking for how to manipulate the conversation or you. And if you're attracting that type of person, you have to actually look at yourself and say, why? What is it? And so I
Mm.
started attracting and put a different frequency out. And the frequency was love, it was partnership, it was collaboration, it was trust, and being that 100%, I attracted it. And
Mm.
it the people like Dr. Michelle Mraz completely resonate in a second. You and I completely resonate in a second because that's where we live.
Yeah. 100%. It, you had another situation in life that kind of felt rough, from what I understand. So you had this huge business piece, and you came back from. I love that. You're kind of the underdog story, which you cheer on the underdog. You were the underdog, and then all of a sudden, I think a lot of people experience this. They felt it. They felt COVID. They felt that whole piece going into play, and there was a lot of difficulties for a lot of people. And I know for yourself, like that was a rough time because you lost, well, all I think a lot of speakers, they lost all of their speaking gigs, and all of a sudden no one was meeting. So, what are you supposed to do? Like, everyone's at home, like twiddling their thumbs, or they're like playing on their iPhone, like Angry Birds. Is Angry Birds still a thing? I don't even know.
I'm sure it is.
But you actually use this almost as a rebrand, as kind of the Phoenix piece of relaunching into something brand new. And I'd love for you to tell people a little bit about that, of almost kind of how you got your smile back in life.
Well, I don't know who made this quote. Several people have borrowed it, and so I apologize for that part. But it's life happens, and what are you going to do about it? Are you going to react in a negative way, or are you going to react in a positive way? What are you going to glean and utilize to be more powerful? Because everything's a lesson. So I'll just say that my mom passing was the last thing I wanted, but she gave me the biggest lesson she'd ever given me, which is how precious life is. And it got me into high action for embracing a purpose driven life. The pandemic is my second renaissance, or my second identity shift, which caused me to step into being the best father, stepping into higher education and working on my dissertation, and really commanding a shift in how I created relationships that monetize, because I had so much opportunity going to events. I could really play low and just have so many people know me, the photographs. I mean, it wasn't that it was super easy. It was just, there was just a lot of plays you could do with it. And so I didn't
Mm-hmm.
take the monetization that seriously because it was just so many different angles and ways that money could happen. And when the pandemic happened and I looked at my wife and she says, we have lost every event except for 2. And I said, I know. She said, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't know. And she said, you don't look worried. And I said, I'm not. And she says, why aren't you worried? I said, I don't know. But I actually found out why I wasn't worried. It's what you have, Nathan. It's faith.
Yeah.
I had complete faith, I promise you, that I was not even one bit in trepidation, not even a degree.
Mm.
I wasn't a fool. I just was completely in faith that this was part of the plan. And had it not happened, Kenny would not be an author. I would not have become Dr. Smiley. I became the identity because of a pandemic to get a dissertation that gave me the PhD right to say, I would like to rebrand my name as Dr. Smiley. And there are a lot of people that thought it was Dr.
A
Smiley doesn't have a
gimmick.
PhD, but I mean, I got it. And then the third thing is I learned how to do webinars, and I learned how to really
Mm.
crank a 15-hour day into really mastering what it is to serve relationships where there's no money or there's no opportunity. And it's just serve, like, do things, help people. And
Yeah.
I had a tidal wave of opportunities happen when the pandemic finished. But I will tell you one thing that was a God thing and an unexpected thing. When we lost everything and I was in complete faith, I would have never guessed that the month after, where I lost everything, that I'd have one of my best months. And here's what happened. I started the Rolodex thing of, hey, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? How's the pandemic affecting you? Is there anything I can do to help you? And I had people coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, Ken, you've always been bugging me to do a book. And I always use the excuse I don't have time. I got time and I got money. How much? And so I made these prices too low, but I had an influx of probably almost not quite 100K, but around 100K over a couple month period of people saying, let's do it. Like they were in abundance. You can't imagine how much that gave me confidence that I could focus on Kenny, that I could focus on what moves I need to make. Because if you have money come in,
Mm-hmm.
you're set. And when you don't have money come in, you're in a little bit of stress. And I never had to really experience stress. I did eventually become a Lyft driver, an Uber driver. I rented my car in Turo. I just raised rent money any way I could, but I only did 2 or 3 hours so I could focus on Kenny and I could focus on building the business. But I did cash
Mm.
stuff just to make sure it was always coming in. I was not the recipient of any type of financial aid. So that was a blessing because when you get financial aid and you get comfortable, I got news for you. You don't have to work as hard for all this stuff. And I had to bust my butt to figure things out. And when I did, the glory was in the long term. It was just so much stuff was developed. I have I have a phone right here with about 26,000 people that it's just my life. It's everyone I've ever met. They text, whatever. The pandemic taught me to think differently. I bought a second phone, and this phone is called my inner circle phone. And I started with one contact, then a second contact, then a third. It now has 9,500 contacts, but they're all hand um,
Entry.
created, typed in. And the reason I say this, Nathan, is that breakthrough of this has just added a significant amount of abundance because there's focus on relationship here, where this is focus on I don't know what. And so
Mm.
my biggest message is get focused. Get focused on what you're doing to create a better world for yourself, for your family, and it's going to create abundance. And I have a couple formulas when it's appropriate. I'd like to share that are
Yeah.
really epiphanies about publishing. That if someone used these formulas, they'd see a lot more success in doing a book. The two formulas I have, one is publishing, the other one is conversion for business. So I'll do the publishing one first. Most people think that all the energy should be put into making a book, and then the world's waiting. They're going to get the book, and everything's going to be fine. It's a Disney story or a fairy tale. And what inevitably happens is whether you spent $20,000 or $5,000, the world was not waiting, and no one wants to spend $20, and no one wants to read a book they don't have time to read from a person that never has proven that they've actually done anything surmountable. So
Yeah.
they sell 100 books, they sell 200 books, or they bribe their aunts and uncles to buy more, and it goes up to 300 books. And the problem is most of these people don't read the books because they're just basically handing $20 over to Jeff Bezos so that Jeff Bezos can give $6 to the author, right?
Yeah. Just to support you.
Yeah.
Quote
So
unquote.
this is called the little C. And if I was to draw it on this display here, it would be like that big. It's just a little C. And people think that the C is this big,
I
but
think it's huge.
it's so little. And the reason it's so little is because it has no impact. The book has no impact. The author has no impact. And it's a hard thing to acknowledge and say, but it's the truth. Or the numbers wouldn't be so horrific. There's 99% of authors that never do another book, and they put their tail between their legs and say, I guess this isn't for me, or I guess I'm not an author. And magically, the 1% that actually use the right formula, which is a D that's as big as the whole screen, which is distribution, with 2 years of energy, creating a tipping point, relentless marketing, relentless social proof, and just having the book like it's your son and letting the world know that this book matters and letting yourself know that anything you can think of that makes the book better, you do to the book so the book is better for anyone that reads it. So
Mm.
my books evolve. Every time I go to print, I say, is there something that could make it better? And my design team knows that it could be 101 improvements. It could be 10 improvements. It could be 2 improvements. I will send a new print file because those 2 things could change someone's life, or it could be something I point out in a presentation, and it rings all of a sudden. People want to be part of it. And so that big D is equal to the big I. And here's the way it looks. It's a little C, and it's a big, big D, and then it's a big I. Now, if you have a little C and a little D, you're going to have a little I. So let me tell you what the I is. I is impact. I is inspiration. I is income. All 3 are almost synonymous. If you have high impact, you will have high inspiration, you will have high income, high abundance, right? So the D is the focus point. And so anytime you're doing a book, if you have a large distribution plan, you probably will have high impact, and you'll probably say, I'm the author, I can write another book. And so that is the big secret in the formula that I've realized, that I'm so successful with books, just because I understand there's a distribution plan that has to be put in place. And that distribution is not Amazon, and it's not Barnes and Noble, and it's not Target. Those places don't market your book. You are the marketer. So market the books to you.
It kind of reminds me of, so when I was working 6 jobs at one point, and it reminds me of that time because I started a martial arts school. And I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, build it and they will come.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not true. If you build it, you have a building. And I recall thinking, if I build a martial arts school, people will walk through the door. I didn't have a marketing plan. I didn't have anything. I had 3 people walk through the door. And then guess what? I had 3 people that walked out of the door because they were looking for another studio. But it's funny. You're right. Is that those different components are so important. Distribution is important. Getting it out there, working it is important. I think even just a testimony to character and who you are is important too, of how you put that foot forward.
Yep.
You also have another equation, if I'm not mistaken, it's SPH.
I do have that one. That was my Arnhold third one, but I want to make sure people are able to use this formula I just gave: C times D equals I. They can use it in any capacity. The C could be a pizza. The C could be a widget. Anything that is a C is only going to do so much impact if you don't have a distribution plan, a marketing plan, a social proof plan, and a campaign. I call it a campaign. If you have a campaign, you will have a future president if it is a perception campaign with integrity. So I love the fact that we had 2 presidents, President Barack Obama and President Trump, completely, like, there's no way you could say those are the same people. No one would get them confused, right? But they had one thing in common. They had a perception campaign that won. And
True.
A perception campaign that wins is just a campaign that's fueled by integrity and just relentless belief it's going to work, and getting everyone else to believe it's going to work. That's it. So my next formula is actually a conversion formula, because I do love sales, and I've always saved myself from writing this book. I've written a book on networking, on marketing. I've never written a book on sales, but this is kind of like a TED Talk in sales, and I don't have it completely developed, but I love the formula. So people think that we buy from people we know, like, and trust. And I mean, anytime I'm in an audience, they all nod their heads like, of course, that's what you do. That's what you do. And I kind of put it on its head.
When was the last time you bought a house from your mother-in-law, or
Nathan,
your best friend?
you're gonna love my next question. So I say, okay, so you buy from people you know, like, and trust. Would you agree you also buy from people that eat, drink, and poop? And the answer is yes, you do. And so if that's true and the other one's true, wow, I guess everyone that eats, drinks, and poops you buy from, and everyone that you know, like, and trust you buy from. And the answer is you don't. 99% of people that you know, like, and trust you don't buy from. So it's not why do you not buy from them, it's why do you buy from the 1% or the 0.1% or the 100% that actually you do buy, that happen to be people that eat, drink, poop, and you know, like, and trust. Okay. So there's something that's hidden, and there are 2 variables that they have that the other 99.5 or 99.9% don't have. Are you ready for this? Remember that I?
Yep.
Inspiration. If a person is inspiring, they will cause conversion for the fool, meaning they will have a fool that says, I'm so inspired, I'll buy. And then they go, what did I just buy? Okay. So that's inspiring. If you marry it with one other variable called SP, social proof, which is ratings variable of testimonials and Google ratings, etc., and they're 5-star or thereabouts, it doesn't matter what it cost. It could be 10,000, it could be 100,000, whatever. It's a safe thing to buy because the person's inspiring because they're inspired by who they are. And the social proof edifies that everyone who's worked with them has no complaint that the money spent was well spent. That is, are you ready for this? I times SP equals high C, meaning higher C. So the higher conversion.
Wow.
Now, SPH, my favorite one of all. This is the dissertation. So whenever I ask people what their SPH is, they look at me like, are you misspelling the variable? And I'm like, no, that is what it is. So it's what are your smiles per hour? And I did a deep dive. I had all the time in the world during the pandemic to take a deep dive on what is your SPH and how does it affect your income, your life, your abundance, your happiness, etc. And without going into a 1-hour dissertation of what that is, I'll just give you an overview. The higher your SPH is, the higher your wonder factor is, the higher you believe anything is possible, the higher your attraction is, the higher your dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins are, the higher your wellness is, the lower your cortisol is, the lower your stress is, the more you're just enjoying life. The higher your retention is at your office space, the higher your value is on your face, the higher your enjoyment of your relationships are, everything. There's not any downside to a high SPH. And so SPHs are to compete with kids. If kids are doing like a 400, 200, 300, 400 well, actually they're doing about 400 smiles a day. You divide it by, I don't know, 12 hours or whatever. If you can do that many smiles, you're kicking a good life right now.
It's funny because when I drive around, and I like to look at people. I don't know about you, but like
I never look at anyone. Somewhere, you were the first person I actually looked at, Nathan. So you probably noticed that.
Well, you were very lucky that you got to look at me and not someone else because I have this unforgettable face. Not a good way, but it's unforgettable. It's burned into your retina. But it's funny because I drive around and I'll stop I'll be at a stoplight and I'll look over to my left and I'm like looking at the person like, what is going on with your day? Like it's just, you are not a happy person. Or like people are talking on the phone. It looks like they're yelling. It looks like everyone is yelling at someone on the phone. But it's funny because I don't know. There was one point within college. I remember taking a trip down to Eugene, about 2 hours south of where I was living at the time for college. And I was driving back up and we had like, what were the Pringles? Yeah, it was the Pringles. So, and then I thought, man, like, can you do the duck thing? Like put the Pringles in your mouth and make the duck thing. And so I'm driving, by the way. So I'm taking Pringles and I'm putting them in my mouth and I'm driving up to people and I'm just matching their speed until they look over at me and I look at them with these duck lips and they just bust up laughing. And like, I've got people that are like, yeah, good job. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
But I got to tell you, like, man, people need to learn how to smile more. And, it's funny because my wife always says, I've got this RBF thing. I'm like, no, you don't have an RBF thing. You need to work on smiling more. And it's true because I think we all need to work on smiling. Smiling is a big thing. It creates all of the beautiful chemicals, natural chemicals in your body that you want to have. And there's a lot of different things that we can do in life to make ourselves healthier. And smiling is something that we can all do every single day. And I love that. I want to ask you one more question here, but before we do, this has been such an amazing time, Ken, just to be able to spend with you to hear a number of different things about your life and about marketing books. And, for all of you that are listening, I hope that you take a moment to go check out some of Ken's content. If you are looking to write a book, if you're looking to become an author, or maybe you're interested in his radio show, Amplified, you can go and you can visit drsmiley360.com. That's DRSMILEY 360.com. So go over, check him out. And, I want to end on this question because I think this is a really powerful question. I think it's It's synonymous with who you are, I think, this idea of a book. You truly believe that there's a book in every single one of us and that everyone should write a book. And I know there's a lot of people out there that think, man, why would I write a book? Who's going to read my book? Why should I write a book? And so I'm curious for you, why would you tell someone to write a book? What is the power of a book? Why is that such a huge piece of your life that you want other people to write a book?
Because of my first experience writing a book, I learned that a book causes you to step into your ultimate identity of what that book is supposed to portray. And being an integral person, when I wrote a book on becoming the perfect networker, I had to assume and become that person that was congruent with the message I was saying I am or that I know about. And so a book causes you to step into your highest power, I think. The second thing is stories sell. And when you sing your story and you sing your story with your soul, people fall into that first equation of conversion, which is inspiration. They find out who you are. They find out what you're about. They find out that you're hopefully loved. They find out that you are a person to be respected because you are committed to what you want to do in life. That's number two. Number three is you cannot write a book about your expertise in your topic without researching it. So you actually learn more about what you love and you are able to hone it into presentations. You're able to experiment with it and become that much better afterwards. The fourth is there are people that love you and they may not know your story. I'm sad to say I know a little more of my dad's because I've peeled it out of him since my mom passed, but I don't know my mom's story. I know that I lived with her. I know she was a wonderful mom. I know she cheered me darn. And I know that there was not a day I failed that she didn't say, you can do it. And that was the message I needed to hear every single time because as an entrepreneur, you fail a lot. And the more you fail, the more you need to hear, this is what I needed to do to get to the next step. So they're your kids, they're your parents that they just know you exist. They don't know what's in your heart. They don't know what you're going through. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And also there's just those hidden stories that could be gems of wisdom for whoever you do love. So you can write a book for you and you can write a book for the people you love. And that is not an expensive process. If you want to write a book to increase your career's chance of really being taken seriously, I think that it's the smartest investment you can make. If it's $20,000 or $30,000 and it causes you to have those four things happen to you, and that you have an edge over anyone else that you're competing with, and you're closing maybe 20 or 30% more business, and your demand is going up, so your price is going up, where do I sign up? But remember, without the big D, meaning distribution of what your message is, you're just writing another book. And so the book is always a good idea to write, but if you're going to have it impact the world, please, please, please look at that formula, because that formula is the only way that's going to happen.
Ken, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with everyone. I know so many people listening right now have gained so much value from what you've shared. For those of you that are still here, remember to like, share, subscribe to the podcast, and remember, like always, be more, see more, and experience more than before.